Cowabunga, everybody. I'm John. This is my channel, and today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite things: television, movies, and comic books. Now, this is a companion piece to my first video in which I cast uh, characters from 1935 with actors from 1935. Uh, the premise being, I've always thought every announcement DC's had since the last 20 years. Wouldn't it be great if they started at the very beginning and worked their way up to my all-time favorite storyline, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths? Now, I did love the Arrowverse version, but I want a more comic accurate version in live action. So, uh, ground rules. Just as in the last video, I will not be doing any IPs that were not owned by national periodicals at the time, so no Oswald the Lucky Rabbit or Tom Mix. I will not be doing any characters that only appeared in one issue. Well, not any features that appeared in one issue. Let me rephrase that. And I will not be doing anything based on literary works. So no Ivanhoe, no Treasure Island, no Three Musketeers, or anything tangentially related to the Three Musketeers. Um, so in addition to the characters I cast in the first video, I'm going to cast again with modern actors. I am also going to do Chico Chaco and talk about how I would fix the problems I have with that strip. And I am throwing in some Easter egg characters and some original characters uh, to help things make a little more sense. So let's get to it, shall we? All right, just with the last video, we're going to start at the very beginning with Jack Woods. Once again, Jack Woods appeared on the cover of New Fun Comics #1, which was the first comic book published by National Allied Periodicals back in 1935. If you didn't watch the first video, in 1935, what publishers would do is they would take weekly and Sunday comics strips, package them together into a magazine, and then resell them. Well, National Allied Periodicals, the company that would eventually become DC, decided that they didn't want to pay the licensing on those comic strips anymore. They wanted to produce their own new material because it would be cheaper. And New Fun Comics was born. Now, uh, up until I believe 1939, when Superman got his own book, and even then, um, comic books were anthologies. So in each book, you will find westerns, spies, fantasy, sci-fi, uh, normal kids getting into trouble, some played for straight up laughs, a little bit of everything in each book. Uh, and even when Superman was published, it would contain 4 Superman stories rather than just one long one. So, as I said, we are going to start with Jack Woods. Now, I have given a lot of thought about Jack Woods over the years because he is the first protagonist in DC history. Um, and in my mind, I have written like an entire show Bible on how to make this like a TV show Western. Now, um, the biggest problem with Jack Woods, well, 2 biggest problems is one, his supporting cast disappears after each story. They don't stick around. Um, I think that having a solid ensemble cast would really strengthen the character, especially since he is a stereotypical cowboy written in 1935. I mean, he is a cardboard cutout of all the other cowboys of the time period. So we need a strong ensemble would really inject some more personality and life to a show about him. Uh, the other big problem I have is that at the very end uh, of the series, he unalives someone and then goes on the run, and then the series just stops. Um, in my headcanon slash Bible that I have written in my head, I would actually, make the person he unalives, one of the bad guys, um, and his gang comes for revenge. And in the final season, the penultimate episode, not the last episode, but the one before it, Jack himself would be unalived, and then he would be revenged by a character I'm going to talk about a little bit later. And uh, the third thing that I would need to happen in a Jack Woods TV show is to tie him back to the rest of the DC universe. For that, I have a couple of surprises in store when we get down to the castings. And um, I would reveal either in the first season of Sandra of the Secret Service or the last season of Jack Woods that he is actually Chief Ames' grandfather or alleged grandfather. All right, so let's get down to casting, shall we? First up, as our hero Jack Woods, I have cast Scott Eastwood. Now, I know he wants to move away from his father's legacy and all that, but this is exactly the kind of role his father would have done 20 years ago, and he's he's made for it. I mean, he would make an awesome protagonist cowboy. Uh, as Don Nogales, I have Damian Beecher. Not really familiar with his work. He was suggested by Chatbox. As as Nogales' daughter, I have Anna de Armas, who would also serve as one of Jack's love interests, and the one he's actually in love with. Uh, as Miguel, I have cast Diego Luna. As Don Pedro de Roganza, who is the mayor of the town and a minor villain in the first story arc, we have Benicio del Toro. Again, the overarching villain throughout all the stories is Pancho Villa, for which I have cast Joaquin Casio, or Joaquin Casio. Y'all, I am going to mess up some of these names. I promise you, and I apologize in advance. And then as Rualis, who is one of Villa's lieutenants, I have cast Pedro Pascal. Now, as I said, I've written an entire Bible full of supporting characters. So I have some original characters I would like to add in here. Martha Hawkins is a widow and the mother of two children, and she is the blacksmith in the town. She inherited it from her late husband. For this role, I have chosen Frances McDormand. I believe she could play a hard as nails with a heart of gold frontierswoman. Yeah. Now, here is that surprise I promised you. Her son is named Hannibal Hawkins. If y'all don't get it, that is Hannibal Hawks is the name of uh, Nighthawk, who is one of the cowboy vigilantes in the DC universe. as the one of the past lives of Hawkman. In this role, I have cast Levi Miller, who is currently a teenager, but a few years down the road, when this series ends, I think he could transition into Hawkman. Uh, as his little sister, I have Susanna Sissy Hawkins, played by Thea Eddy. Unfortunately, I have lost the AI showing what she would look like in the late 18th century. Um, but moving on, after the Hawkins, I have Reverend Thaddeus Cole. Reverend Thaddeus Cole is the preacher in this small town, and I have cast Paul Dano in the role. Paul Dano is an amazing actor. I think he could really embody the role of this preacher who has a good heart but is conflicted about some social issues of the time. Uh, we'll talk a little more about those conflicts in a moment. Uh, okay, so the next character I have created is named Sydney Marchand. Sydney Marchand is a reporter and photographer from the East Coast who has decided to move out west because he has gotten word that they're going to build a train station in this small town, basically, effectively creating a boom town. And he wants to be the first reporter on the scene to establish his own newspaper and try and make his fortune that way. Now, in my mind, this character is a closeted homosexual. Now, as a gay man myself, I like to see characters represented on screen. However, I personally believe that an actor's sexuality is not the business of the public. And so I really don't care if the actor portraying the role is homosexual or not, because it's that actor's own business as long as they can create a compelling character. So, for the two homosexual characters I have created, I don't know if the actors are gay. I really don't care. Uh, the one playing Sydney is Logan Lerman. Again, don't know, don't care. His name was suggested as someone who could play this reporter photographer, which is the main focus of the character. Uh, and then I've created a character by the name of Dane Holloway, who would be the second uh, closeted gay character in this show. Dane is the owner of the local tavern, gambling hall, slash house of ill repute um, in this town, and he's pretty good in a fight too. For this role, I have cast Gavin Leatherwood. A bit, I loved him in Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and this is a bit of wish fulfillment on my part. I'm not too proud to admit that. As his Fallen Dove employees, I have named them Ebony, Ginger, and Kitty. Ebony would be played by Kiki Lane, Ginger by Saoirse Ronan, and Kitty by Chloe Grace Moritz. Now, I am not familiar with the works of these actresses, however, they did come recommended to me. These are three ladies that enjoy their work, and they really like Dane and feel safe when he is around. Uh, okay. In an effort to have more diversity, in the first or second episode, I would also have this African American family move into the town. And the father has won a large house in a poker game back east, and They plan on turning the first floor of the house into a cafe, and they're moving to make a better life for themselves. Now, this is going to create conflict because they're the first African American family in this town. Um, Hence, uh, the conflict with Paul Dano's character. His heart tells him to help the family, but he's under pressure from the white ranchers. And then, of course, there's some white ranchers who take umbrage with it, led by one in particular, who I'll get to in a moment. But right now, let's discuss the family. As the matriarch, uh, Viola Davis, I mean, come on, that woman is one of the best actresses out there, one of the best. Um, and as So she would play Sarah Moore, the matriarch. As her husband and the patriarch of the family, I have chosen Delroy Lindo, who could bring a lot of heart to the father figure type character. Uh, they have four children. The eldest is Jake Moore, played by Caleb McLaughlin. Now, keep that in mind because he's going to come up again in a moment. Uh, the, a year younger would be Isaiah Moore, played by Elijah Richardson, followed by Hope Moore, played by Ella Simone Tabu, and then finally Danny Moore, played by Markathani Reese. I hope I got that right. As I said, I'm probably going to butcher some names. I apologize. Um, so, yeah, that would be the Moore family. As I mentioned in my previous video, the AI generator I used to create these images was free and therefore is not the best. And so some of these children pictures might be a little off uh, as far as real age versus what the AI generates for me. After them, we have the McAllisters. The McAllisters are the general store owner and his wife, and they have hearts of gold, and they are supportive of everyone in the community. For Walter McAllister, I have Richard Jenkins, and for his wife Edna, I have Margot Martindale, and I absolutely adore Margot Martindale. Um, she's right up there with one of my favorite actresses as well. And then as the rancher who is causing all this trouble, I've given them the name Elias Grayson. I have Stephen Lang, who I believe would make a very good villain in a cowboy type situation. And now for the last four for Jack Woods. The last four original characters. I have Whitney Von Houten. Whitney is a 16-year-old girl from New York. She is a poor little rich girl. Her father is a banker. And a lot like Nicole Kidman's character in Far and Away, she wants a life of adventure. She wants the romanticized version of the Old West that she has read about in Pulse. And so she signs up to be a mail order bride. Specifically, she becomes Jack's bride, which just before she arrives, he has met and fallen in love with Dolores. So there is this triangle there because he feels obligated to Whitney, but he is in love with Dolores. And things get further complicated when Whitney and Hannibal fall for each other. And at the end of the series, as I have envisioned it, uh, Whitney, Dolores, and Whitney's child, whom we don't know who the real father is, they escape back east and meet back up with her parents. And um, that child, as I mentioned earlier, is later revealed to be, I'm sorry, the mother of Chief Ames from Sandra of the Secret Service. So, in the role of Whitney as the girl who runs away for a life of adventure and finds more than she bargained for, which can have both its comedic and dramatic moments, I have Elle Fanning. Uh, as her parents, the rich banker and his wife, whom we would only see in the very first episode of the series and the very last episode of the series, I have John Lithgow and Christine Baranski. Both of these actors are really great at playing pompous, I'm better than you are type roles, but they're also really good at playing the familial, uh, I'm glad you're home, I'm glad you're safe that we would need uh, in the finale. And as the Van Houten's maid, who is instrumental in helping Whitney become this mail order bride and escape. Again, only seen in the first and the last episode, we have Storm Reed. All right. Now, I mentioned that this railroad is being built in this town, right? Well, if you saw the first video, you know that there is a strip that takes place on the railroad called Along the Main Line. And the main characters there are Ed and Jake. Well, in my mind, I would have Ed supervising the building of these railroad tracks and the station at this small town. And for that role, I have uh, mentally cast John Barenthal, another great actor. I love him in everything I've seen him in. And then we already have our Jake in um, Caleb McLaughlin. And at the end of season one of Jack Woods, Ed convinces Jake to join the railroad, and it along the main line would be a direct spinoff. And then towards the end of the run of Along the Main Line, again, these shows are supposed to be taking place in the late 1800s, like 1890. Um, they will meet a character with the last name of Scott, who becomes a railroad man, and that will be an Easter egg to the fans because Scott is the last name of the Golden Age Green Lantern, Alan Scott. Uh, again, late 1800s, so this guy would be Alan's father, not um, or grandfather rather. So not Alan Scott himself, but it'd be a nice Easter egg. All right, as I said before, I plan on having Chief Ames be Jack Wood's grandson, whether legitimate or illegitimate. And I would have this revelation either be in the final season of Jack Woods or the very first episode of Sandra McLean. Now, in the first episode of Sandra McLean, in addition to the characters of that series, I would also introduce Barry O'Neill and Wing Brady and have those three characters plus Lothar, who is the Gavonian agent who has come to recruit Sandra, all fly together to Paris, and Wings, the pilot, flies all three to Paris. From there, Barry goes to meet with Chief Inspector Legrand. Sandra takes a train across Europe to Gavonia, and Wing flies on to the Sahara to join up with the French Foreign Legion. Now, if you're confused and you didn't see my first video, don't worry, I'm going to explain who all these characters are. First up, let's talk about Sandra McLean. Her strip is called Sandra of the Secret Service, and in the her first adventure, in the first issue, she gets kidnapped by this guy named Lothar, who is a secret agent for the country of Gavonia, and he needs her help to uh, solve some crimes in Gavonia, specifically because she is the spitting image of the Gavonian princess, uh, who is dodging assassination attempts and a conspiracy to dethrone her. And Gavonia is, they don't ever say why, but it is necessary to U.S. defense. So Sandra gets permission from Chief Ames and goes to Gavonia to help solve this by impersonating the princess human target style. I forgot to mention Sandra's also the first heroine in the DC universe. She doesn't have superpowers, but she is definitely the first female protagonist. In the role of Sandra, I would cast Lily James. She just has that spy type look to her in my eyes anyway. And I think she could also play the princess fairly well. I mean, look how good she looks in these AIs. For Lothar, I have chosen Tom Hopper. He's good at playing the heavy. As Sandra's valet Reynolds, I have chosen Toby Jones. He would make a great, snooty valet. Uh, and for Chief Ames, I have chosen Leaf Schreiber. Now, I'm going to throw in a twist. So, on the train from Paris to Gavonia, I would have an entire episode as kind of an intermezzo murder mystery on the train. And as a special guest star, who I'm not sure if I would use him as a guest star or introduce him as a regular for the first season and then recurring after that, I would pick Giovanni Zatara going on his first European tour, making him a very young Giovanni Zatara at this point, and in 3 years down the road, giving him his own series. Zatanna, Zatara's daughter, is one of my all-time favorite characters. So the fact that I'm bringing in Zatara first, earlier, like 3 years earlier than he would have, yeah, it does my heart good. So I have cast in this role Timothy Chalamet. It's, to me, a no-brainer. The man is everywhere these days, and as a young homo magi stage magician, the similarities between the look of Zatara and Wonka are just too good to pass up. I gotta cast Timothy Chalamet. All right, moving on to Barry O'Neill. Barry O'Neill is about a detective in Paris who is assisting the chief inspector, Chief Inspector Legrand, in hunting down a terrorist by the name of Fang Gao. Fang Gao is a Chinese national who hates all other nationalities, but for some reason, especially the French. Fang Gao also has a henchman named Ivan in the first arc, and uh, rather than having him be just some random detective, by making him a Secret Service agent who is also answering to Chief Ames and who leaves at the same time as Sandra, I have now tied uh, this story into the rest of the 1930s DCU. Uh, in the role of Barry O'Neill, I have cast Hugh Jackman. Uh, Barry's one who does get into a lot of fights, and there is a lot of action, but he's also one to use detective skills. And I think at this point in his career, Jackman would be ready. He doesn't quite want to get out of action yet, but he'd like some roles with that aren't all about that. As Chief Inspector Legrand, I have cast Christoph Waltz. Um, as Feng Gao, I have cast Ludi Lin. That one was recommended to me. And as Ivan, I have cast Andy Serkis. I've only seen Andy Serkis in the Batman, but just the look, I could see him playing a foreign spy very, very easily. Now, Wing Brady is a story about a U.S. pilot uh, who is either on loan with or a member of the French Foreign Legion, and they are battling Bedouins in the Sahara. And as Wing, I have cast Zachary Montgomery. I love that man in Stranger Things, and I could see him playing a hotshot pilot. And I would personally, have him be an American pilot who is under orders to assist the French Foreign Legion. And yeah, I would cast Zachary Montgomery in that role. As Slim, his best friend, I would actually cast Tom Holland. I know y'all, Tom Holland's like a leading man, Adventures of Spider-Man. But in the Avengers, he made a great sidekick. So I can see him doing either role, and I would like to see him as the sidekick in this one. And comic relief, because he can inject humor into uh, stressful situations on screen. As their Corporal Lauren, I have cast. Give me a second here. I told you these names. Uh, Jean Dujardin. Uh, and I think he would make a great French corporal. And I have given the Sheikah a name as Sheikah Assad, and I have cast Amir. It's either Wait or Wakid. I'm not sure. Um, I apologize. Uh, so that's who I would cast as the Sheikah. Okay, moving on. Okay, so magic crystal of history. Uh, First things first, I would shorten the name to just the magic crystal. Second, instead of having the main characters of Bobby and Binks being siblings who were playing and got caught in the rain and running into a shed where they find the crystal, I would actually have them be two teenagers on a date. The car breaks down in the rain, so they run up to this old mansion, and inside they find all kinds of goodies. But the crystal calls to them, and they touch it, and then get transported back to ancient Egypt. Um, and this mansion just so happens to be the House of Mystery because the House of Mystery can be at any time and any place that it wants to be, and therefore it could be on Earth 2 in 1935 at just the right moment to um, get these kids to come in, which means I'm also going to introduce the house's groundskeeper, Kane, who is em- he is the embodiment of the idea of the biblical Cain. So, yeah, thank you, Sandman, for making things more confusing. Don't get me wrong, I love Sandman, both the novels and the TV show. Uh, and because, we've had so many retcons, we know that the prince is actually the first life of Hawkman. We know that the high priest is actually Vandal Savage. Uh, so I'm also going to add in uh, another person who was there at the time, and that is Nabu the Wise. And then we have the whole scene set, uh, and Bobby and Binks are on hand to witness this. Now, I said I'm changing it up. So throughout the course of the series, uh, the magic crystal will follow its regular progression. Uh, However, along the way, you might find a few of Hawkman's other lives. Um, and specifically, I would do a crossover between Jack Woods and Magic Crystal where they meet Hannibal. I would probably do that at the end of the run after Hannibal has already become Nighthawk. And I would go further than where the series ended. I believe the series ended in the Asian continent around the same time as America was being discovered. I would have them go there too. I would have them see some American history. I would actually have them see some of the future that we know is going to happen, but was never seen because, the book got canceled. And at the end of it, you find out that they end up going to the vanishing point, and you find out that Bobby and Binks are actually the first time masters. Yes, I know that they're not in canon, but that's my head canon. Is they get a hold of this crystal and they become the first time masters. And meanwhile, throughout their adventures, Kane is following them everywhere. So, let's get on with castings, shall we? As Bobby, I have Noah Jupe, and as Binks, I have cast McKenna Grace. Now, we already have our Kofu. because he's the first life of Hawkman, and one of his later lives is Hannibal Hawks. So I am casting Levi Miller in the role of Khufu, and allowing and showing that it is the same character in different time periods and getting that idea of reincarnation across. Um, as Vandal Savage, I have Javier Bardem. As Nabu, I have Omar Metwali. As Chaira, I have Yasmina El Abd. I hope I pronounced that right. She is actually more of a recording artist, although I believe she can act, and I think she can do the role. As Kane, I have Faris. And then once they go forward in time and meet Tutankhamun, I have Rami Malek. Um, yeah, so those are the changes I would make to Magic Crystal. And that's how I'd also cast Magic Crystal of History for that matter. All right, up next we have 2023 Super Police. Well, first thing we got to do is change that name. I would shorten it to either just Super Police or change it to Space Police. Now, the premise behind this strip is a group of space cops are trying to track down and capture one Captain Kidlaw, who is a mad scientist slash would-be dictator. Uh, I would tie it into the rest of this golden age 1930s universe that we're creating in one of two ways. I'd either have Bobby and Binks from Magic Crystal show up in their time travel adventures, or I would have either Professor Shanley or Captain Kidlaw mention something that happened in Earth's past, which would be something that's ongoing in one of the other series. Now, eh, to cast this thing, um, as Rex Cosmos, the captain of these police, I would cast Manny Jacinto, and then as his love interest, Joan Shanley, I would cast Emma Stone. As Joan's father, the chief science officer, Professor Shanley, I would cast Stanley Tucci. I love Stanley Tucci. The man can do comedy, he can do drama. He's just a really good actor. I'm excited for this one. As the chief security officer, Brute von Henning, I would cast Alan Richson. Er, I love Alan Richson. I loved him in Smallville. I loved him in Titans. Yeah, I just love the actor. Okay. As their pilot, Axel Yoke, I have Jacob Bertrand. And then as Captain Kidlaw, the villain, I have cast Vin Diesel. Wait, hear me out. I know Vin Diesel has made a name for himself as an action hero, but I would love to see him cast against type and be the villain in this piece. Especially a crazy mad scientist, wants to conquer the entire universe kind of villain. And then we have this character named Renee Avalon, whom I'm not sure exactly how she appears in the books. It's been a long time since I read these adventures. If memory serves, she was a femme fatale type that was working for Kidlaw and trying to come in between Rex and Joan. Um, for this role, I have cast Anya Taylor-Joy. So there you have it. How I would tie this together and my castings for Super Police, not 2023 Super Police, just Super Philippe. All right. If you saw my first video where I cast all these characters using actors from 1935, I actually went in order that they appeared in the comic books. Um, and you might have noticed I've been jumping around in a different order. This is because I'm covering first the ones that are easiest to tie into the rest of this proto universe we are hypothetically creating. So, next on that particular list would be Brad Hardy. Now, Brad Hardy is a fantasy adventure that it's about him and his girlfriend Lorraine Lewis, who find this underground kingdom. And this is really Earth 2's version of Scartaris. So I'm not sure how I would tie it in. Uh, maybe Lorraine is related to uh, is like the cousin of one of the characters in another series, and they mention she disappears, or she mentions how much she misses her cousin, something like that. All right. So, as our hero, Brad Hardy, I've cast Chris Evans. Now, no matter how many times I tried to tell uh, my AI generator, which again was free, eh, and you can read cheap there, uh, that this was a sword and sorcery epic, it still wanted to put Chris Evans in a pseudo Captain America costume. So here you go. Chris Evans as Brad Hardy in a sorcery type epic. As Lorraine Lewis, his lady friend, we have Florence Pugh. As Prince Cardos, I have cast Jared Leto. Jared Leto is another one of those actors that I just love to see perform. Um, and yes, Aaron, I'm going to start some controversy here. I liked his Joker. I don't think it's his fault. I blame the screenwriter and the director for not giving him enough screen time to work with and develop the character further. Moving on, though. Uh, Prince Cardos is the prince of the first underground kingdom they come to. And he's kind of a dark character. And but at the same time, he ends up becoming an ally. I think Jared Leto has the range to do that. Um, all right. Once again, cheap AI. I could not get it to draw a Naga to save my life, nor could I get to do some human rat hybrids. So I'm just going to flash the actors up here. For King Naga of the Snake People, I have Doug Jones, who is an amazing uh, creature horror character actor. Uh, Once again, I don't think the king of the rat people was ever mentioned by name, but the name of his people is Dre. So I'm just going to refer to him as King Dre. I have Stephen Graham. And then as the black magician of the rat people, I've actually given him the name Malachar and cast David Thewlis. Now, up until Sandman, I was aware of David Thewlis and his work, and yeah, I think he would make a really cool black magician, especially one that's, a rat hybrid. It'd be awesome. Uh, and then after that, they come to a kingdom of fairy people, of very small people who look like fairies, only without the wings. They're like pixie size. Um, for their queen, Zira, I have uh, decided to use Emily Blunt, and as the High Priestess Zastia, I've chosen Gemma Chan. So that's Brad Hardy. Moving on. Okay, up next we have Slim Pickens. Now, only one Slim Pickens story stands out in my mind, and it's one where he is in this haunted house. And I kind of got the feeling that he was like a Don Knotts style detective. Um, also, physically and his name shares many similarities with sidekick that Wildcat has a few years down the road. So the way I see this is he is this jittery detective, and then once his series ends, he can like be the Rick Jones of this 1930s Earth 2 universe, and just go from hero to hero, assisting as cameos for an episode until Wildcat comes along and he gets a recurring role. Uh, there is only one modern actor that I could think of to play this role, and that is Jim Parsons. Uh, he, yeah, the man's an amazing actor, and he was made for this particular part. I really like him in this role as this jittery detective in 1935. After that, we're going to Bob Merritt. Now, quick recap: Bob Merritt is a millionaire, inventor, aviator who has just designed a new jet fuel, and the plans of which and the sample have been stolen, and it is up to him and his team to get it back. Now, his team in the strip did not have last names. They just had nicknames. Uh, I have given them at least last names to go with the nicknames. I didn't think of first names yet. Um, and with the exception of Danny, they really had no personality. So I have given them specific roles within the group. Um, although Buzz and Tex are still pretty similar. And in addition to the team, there is also a financier named Cirrus Campbell, who helps fund Merritt's experiments and um, inventions. So, getting into casting, we have as Bob Merritt himself, Chris Hemsworth. Uh, this is an action adventure series, very Mission Impossible style, and I think he could really pull that role off. As Buzz Haskell, we have Richard Madden. Man, I loved him in Game of Thrones. The Red Wedding tore me up. Uh, but I digress. Um, so Buzz would be one of Bob's two bodyguards. And then as Shorty Myers, I've cast Aidan Gallagher. Uh, I love him in Umbrella Academy, and I think as their mechanic, uh, he could be the comic relief of this adventure show and a lot of fun. Uh, Danny Cross is uh, another scientist and like an apprentice to Merritt. He's also a bit of a pretty boy, uh, for which I have cast Daniel Radcliffe, another talented actor. I mean, this particular show, I both when I did the 1935 and this one, I have, packed with talent. Uh, and then as Tex Murdoch, I have Boyd Holbrook. Would be the other bodyguard. And of course, he would talk with a Texas accent and wear a cowboy hat and all that. And it would be so cool to see Boyd Holbrook as one of the good guys instead of a villain. Don't get me wrong, I love his villains. His Corinthian in Sandman was awesome. I also loved him in Logan, but yeah, I want to see him as a hero. So even as, the bodyguard to the main hero, he would still be a hero. And then there's that financier I mentioned, Cyrus Campbell. I have Ben Mendelsohn. Now, to tie this all to the rest of this pseudo universe, um, this particular ensemble type cast and the fact that they are globetrotting, trying to find this formula and all of that, they could do easily do crossovers with any of the other shows that are taking place in 1935. So maybe their adventure leads them to the Sahara and they run into Wing Brady, or to Gavonia and they run into Sandra, or Paris and they run into Barry O'Neill. Um, Heck, they could even, accidentally crash their plane on the outskirts of the underground kingdoms that Brad Hardy's exploring. You know, uh, and it doesn't have to be the entire ensemble crossing over. It could be just one of the characters is following up on a lead and goes to another place. Or yeah, it lends itself very easily to this intellectual experiment of trying to recreate Earth 2 in an imaginary casting, because they are globetrotting and can run into any other character at any other time. All right, next up on our list is my favorite of these properties from 1935. Uh, One, I've always liked the dark and magical side of the DC universe. And Dr. Occult was the first entryway into that. Um, he is also known as the psychic detective. And um, yeah, he's also the only character that survived in the modern day, uh, from any on this list. And so, yeah, he was the first character with powers as Homo Magi. He could work real magic, and yeah, and as I mentioned in my previous video, he was drawn by, invented and drawn by Simon and Schuster, who also invented Superman, and another character named Slam Bradley, who appears in 1936. So even though the guy I cast as in this role is a little unassuming, he's got like a year to bulk up to become Slam Bradley, and then another 2 years after that to play Superman. And I would have him play all three roles because they look alike. Um, Speaking of, as Dr. Richard Occult, I have Harris Dickinson. And as Rose Psychic, his lady friend, and another Homo Magi, I have Ella Balinska. And then as the villain for the first story arc, Bart Moore, aka the Vampire Master, who, as I recall, was a real vampire who had this ray that hypnotized men into becoming fake werewolves. Um, for the Vampire Master, I have cast Ryan Gosling. Yes, he's usually the pretty boy hero, but uh, to be a mad scientist, sadistic vampire, uh, casting totally against type, it would, yeah, I'm here for that. Um, it goes without saying that this would definitely be a horror noir type feeling to it. As Moore's first victim, Sander Armster, I have Ben Barnes. And then as uh, Sanders' wife, Mrs. Armster, I have Rebecca Ferguson. Now, yeah, I here for anything dark like that. So, being is how Dr. Occult ends right before the Golden Age officially starts with Action Comics #1, how would I tie him into the rest of the universe? Well, once his series ends, I would just have him do cameos with other magic users uh, as they pop up, starting with Giovanni Zatara, and he could just team up with another magic user for an episode, and or it could be Rose because she's also a homo magi who ends up assisting another magic user detective in their work. Up next, we have 1720 in the Black. 1720 in the Black is about a gambler who um, wins a string of pearls in a hand of poker. Turns out they're stolen. He returns them to the rightful owner, named Louise. Jim and Louise fall in love, and she gives him $1,000 as a reward, provided he doesn't gamble it. And of course, he bets it all on one spin of the roulette wheel and loses it all. Later that night, the pearls are stolen again, and it's up to him and Louise's house servant, Kim, to retrieve the pearls. And there's a lot of drama because they're in love with each other, but he's a gambler and she wants to change him. And uh, there's a lot of mystery to find out where these pearls are. And to update this for the modern world, I am going to make Jim an actual detective. Uh, I'm not sure if the source material gives him a real job other than gambler, but I would make him an actual PI uh, who is helping to find these pearls as a freebie because he's in love with the owner. Um, for Jim, I have cast Sterling K. Brown as Kim. I've given him a last name of Cho, so Kim Cho. I would cast Stephen Ewan. Once again, folks, I am using a cheap AI, a free AI. So I know that doesn't look like Stephen Ewan, but it is. And then as Louise Vallon, I have cast Vanessa Kirby. Now, to tie Jim to the rest of this world we're creating, the easiest thing to do is have a crossover. And that by making him a detective, in addition to being an unrepentant gambler, I have create opportunity for him to team up with another detective in this world. All right. Speaking of, next up we have Wing Walker. Um, now, there's only two characters in the 1935 strip we got. Um, and it just sets everything up. And those are Wing Walker and his co-pilot Nipper. Uh, again, trying to update this, make it more palatable. I have given them real names. So we have James Wing Walker and Charles Nipper Barker. Um, and they are a couple of stunt pilots. And Wing actually walks on the wings of the airplanes as part of the stunt show. And of course, they get mixed up in mysteries and end up solving mysteries as well. Again, lending itself to any other private detective, psychic detective, or whatnot to tie this all into the same universe. So, as Wing Walker, I have cast Austin Butler, and as his co pilot Nipper, I had cast Justice Smith. Now, these are the last ones that are easily combined into uh, one cohesive universe. The rest of them, especially the comedies, um, might carry over, do crossovers, and guest star on each other's episodes. Um, but that would be awfully forced to tie it into the rest of this. I think the one exception would be is because Jack Andrews, who I guess I will do next, is a Riverdale-esque type mystery. Um, he could tie into the other detectives, and since he's on the basketball team, maybe the other teens in the teen comedies could like be on opposing teams that he runs into in the course of his basketball games. So, as I just mentioned, Jack Andrews is a Riverdale-esque mystery high school with high stakes, though not as high as Riverdale. No one's lives are on the line, but maybe some scholarships and some pride. Um, as the lead, Jack Andrews is a high school basketball player who is trying to solve the mystery of who is fixing his games. For this role, I have chosen Tanner Buchanan, and the one confidant he has is his coach, Coach Muller, for whom I have cast David Harbour, who's everywhere today, and I'm here for it. I love him. Um, and I think in my version, you can't always trust the adults. That's what Riverdale taught us. So, yeah, he might be the confident now, but we'll see how things go later. Now, there are only two teen comedies that could possibly fit into the suggestion of, hey, let's cross over where Jack Andrews plays against this other kid's basketball team. And even one of those was a mistake. So the first of the two is Charlie Fish. And Charlie Fish is a lot more of a slapstick. Uh, but eh, I I think it could work. And Charlie Fish actually had a long run in the early days of comics. Um, as I said in my other video, a lot of the people he runs into aren't ever seen again. Um, everyone except for him seems to be a one-off character. But I would actually keep those people around as a supporting cast and create more of an ensemble feel with Charlie in the center. Um, so as Charlie Fish, I have cast Jack Dylan Grazer, and he sometimes earns extra money as a freelance photographer for his boss at the newspaper. I have named the boss Franklin Grimshaw. He wasn't given a name in the source material. And I have cast Jonah Hill as the editor of the paper. And then Hiram Zupp is the local millionaire. Uh, I have cast Lawrence Fishburne in that role. Charlie's next door neighbor, Pluto, is an absent-minded, nearsighted cook uh, who's actually seen in two issues. Uh, but he has this other next door neighbor named Mrs. Fox. So I have given Pluto the last name Fox, and I have given Mrs. Fox the first name of Doris. And their son is Percy. So for Pluto Fox, I have Steve Zahn. Uh, he is great at comedic roles, hilarious actor. I think he could really work. As Mrs. Doris Fox, I have cast Kristen Skull. Um, again, names, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, for which I apologize. Um, who I've also seen do comedy and is like gold. As Percy Fox, I have cast Christian Convery. And then as Percy's teacher, who didn't have a name, I've given her the name Vera Strickland. I have cast Octavia Spencer. And then as Hiram's bodyguard, didn't have a name, I've given the name Duke Barnes and cast Terry Crews. Yeah, I'd love to see Terry Crews do a comedy. That'd be so much fun. The other teen comedy that could work in a crossover, either with Charlie Fish or Jack Andrews in, again, a sporting event of some kind, would be Freddie Bell, He Means Well. Now, this one's the mistake because in the source material, Freddie Bell is a like toddler in a sailor suit that, through the best of intentions, still gets into trouble. This can still translate to a teenager because the age isn't ever mentioned and the situations could translate. Um, for Freddie Bell, I have cast Asher Angel, who I loved in the Shazam films, and I think he would work really well in a teen comedy where he has the best of intentions but ends up messing up, no matter what the situation is. Up next, we have a quartet of uh, family comedies. I'm defining family comedy here as a sitcom-esque show where the protagonists are children. And I'm going to take back an earlier statement because I can figure out how to tie this first one back into the greater world as a whole. This first one's called Spike Spalding, and it takes place in a country called Petronia. And Sandra of the Secret Service is taking place in a country called Gavonia. And they very much sound like they could be neighbors. So my solution would be to have the Princess of Petronia, Susan Bell, be acting as an emissary in Gavonia and run into Sandra and the Princess Yonda of that country. I don't see that being able to happen in reverse because Spike Spalding is very much a comedy, and Sandra of the Secret Service is very much a drama. And I can see the comedic uh, character, and the character of Susan is the least comedic of all the characters in this show. Going over and doing that serious drama, I can't see the serious drama coming over and doing the comedy. Could be wrong though. Now, the plot of Spike Spalding is that Spike and his best friend are one day kidnapped by an evil count and his henchmen. Because Spike is the spitting image of the Prince of Petronia. Does this plot sound familiar? I think we just used it in Sandra of the Secret Service. Anyways, moving on. And his plan is to put Spike on the throne and then control the throne from there. I don't know what his plan for the older sister Susan was, because technically Susan would be next in line. Anyways, the best friend, with the help of a sailor named Red, uh, overthrow the plot. Red and the princess fall in love. They get married. Um, and everything ends happily ever after. All right, let's get down to casting, shall we? So, IMDb and Chatbox had run out of suggestions for child actors in 2024 for me. So I Google searched and I ran across a talent agency for young actors, and I found um twins from Auckland who have one movie credit under their belt, and so I am going to cast Malachi Pascal as Spike Spalding, and I'm going to cast his twin brother Elias Pascal as the Prince of Petronia. Now, in the source material, Spike's best friend is named Pincus. I don't know why, I just don't like this name. So, with Chatbox's help, I've come up with a new one. It is going to be Philip, or maybe even Pip Abrams. And for that role, I've cast Isaiah Devine. As Count Alex, I have Ralph Fiennes. Now, Ralph Fiennes knows how to do a villain, and he knows how to do a royal. So I think if you put those two together, we're going to have a character that is just gold. As his henchman, Nico Rubo, I have cast Mads Mikkelsen. And Mads Mikkelsen, he just looks like the heavy henchman type. As Red, I have cast Callahan Skogman. I'm not familiar with his work. He looks pretty good in the AI photo, though. And as Susan Bell, the princess, I have cast Thomasin McKenzie. Now, the source material also has one other character, a servant by the name of Sing Lo. Yes, he has the unfortunate name of Sing Lo. Yeah, once again, with Chatbox, I have tried to come up with a less racist name. We have settled on Lin Tao. And for that role, I've cast Ronnie Chang. Now, unfortunately, I forgot to do an AI for this one, and my free subscription has run out, so I couldn't do it through the program I did all the others. And the other free one that I have on my phone just it doesn't like to do actual actors' faces on the images. It likes to just make up the face. So unfortunately, I don't have an AI, but I have cast Ronnie Chang in the role. Next three, unless they're crossing over with each other, I don't see how they would over with anything else in the that we built so far in this world, or even the other comedies or adventures that we're going to continue to build. However, they could possibly cross over with each other because they're the same in tone and character a lot of the times. So this first one is called After School, and as the name implies, it's about a couple boys who get into trouble after school. When reading this one, it has a very Dennis the Menace kind of feel. So if you think Dennis the Menace, you kind of know what this strip is about. Uh, Getting right into it, as Lefty Peters, I have cast Ryder Allen. As his friend Slimsy Simpkins, I have cast Ian Dolly. And then there's this little girl who hangs around who's kind of crushing on Lefty, and that is her name is Gertie, and I have cast Aria Goodson. Now, once again, cheap, free version of AI, so yeah, these kids don't look like their actual ages. Um, as Uncle Wilbur, who is Lefty's uncle, I have cast Stephen Root. I think he could really bring that familial, um, loving uncle to life. As Old Man Spinks, a guy who does not like kids. He's old. He's cranky. He's grouchy. I've cast Danny DeVito. Yeah, sometimes casting against type works, but sometimes casting with type works as well. Next up, while similar in theme, Ramblin' Jim is more like the R gang movies of the 1930s. Bunch of kids hanging in the streets, getting into trouble. Oh, at least two. It does center around one of them, Ramblin' Jim Hunter. For this role, I have cast Boone Storm, a very young child actor who I think could still do the role as a kid getting into trouble. Now, his best friend in the uh, source material is given the name Fishy Gill. Um, I have given him an actual first name of Eugene, so it's Eugene Fishy Gill. And I have cast Dash McCloud in that role. And then there's this sheriff, uh, very simply Sheriff Smith in the comics. I did give him a first name of Elmer. So Sheriff Elmer Smith, who also doubles as a truant officer when the boys run off to go fishing. In that role, I have cast Keith David. And then there's this, once again, cranky old man, very much like our last one. The boys call Old Scratch. I'm give I've used Chatbox to give him the real name of Abner Crawley, and he would be played by Lance Hendrickson. And then our last entry on this family comedy block would be Jibby Jones. Jibby Jones is more of a preteen than a little kid or a teenager. He's kind of that tween stage. Um, Once again, IMDb and um, Chatbox had no suggestions for me, so I went back to that same talent agency website and I found this young man, Mario Pito, also from Auckland, I believe, who doesn't have any film credits to his name yet, but he is with a talent agent. So let's give him a shot in the role. All right, next up, we have a slew of adult comedies. Now, this is not to say that um, the humor is adult in nature or that only adults can enjoy it, or um, that it has mature themes, although any of these could be made into those kind. No, well, I mean, when I say adult comedy, I mean the main protagonists are adults, and the humor might go over the heads of some children. First up, we have kind of a slapstick named Judge Perkins. Judge Perkins is the judge in a small town, and all of his neighbors are crazy. One of the neighbors, Jasper, only appears in the first two issues. However, Judge Perkins has such a long run. I think that any supporting cast we get, we need to keep around uh, to play the uh, comedian to the judge's straight man in comedic terms. As Judge Perkins, I have cast Bryan Cranston, and as Jasper, his neighbor, I have cast Danny McBride. Um, I think that the two together would be comedy gold. It'd be really funny. Moving on from that, we have Loco Luke. Loco Luke is a comedy melodrama. So it would take place in the 18th century. The hero, Loco Luke, is always down on his luck, but he's always trying to do the right thing. For that role, I have cast Dylan O'Brien. And then you have your mustache twirling uh, type villain uh, named Black Dan. In this case, I have cast Leslie Odom Jr. Again, cheap AI. And then you have, in this case, the source material only gives the name Medicine Man to describe this Native American wise man that is just shaking his head at the goings on between the hero and the villain. I have actually given him the name Gray Fox, and with the help of Chatbox, we came up with that. And as casting, I have cast Gary Farmer. Next up, we have Captain Spinnaker. As I mentioned in my first video, I do not care for Captain Spinnaker. It makes absolutely no sense. It's like a surrealist fever dream. So, in my head canon, I would take the idea of Captain Spinnaker and his supporting cast, such as it is, and I would actually place them in a 1935 boarding house. And Captain Spinnaker is lives half of his life in a fantasy world where the other people are just characters in the fantasy. Um, and the rest of the time, it's a very dry British humor, comedy of errors type things. Now, as the lead, Captain Spinnaker, I have cast Sacha Baron Cohen. As a character actor, this man excels. He's amazing at what he does. Now, I will say that I don't personally like some of his comedy, but as a performer, he excels at it. For the rival captain that uh, also lives in the the rival retired captain that also lives in the boarding house, I have cast Ian McShane. I think he could play the great straight man to Sacha Baron Cohen's Spinnaker, and that would play off very well with each other. And then as Mrs. Cluck, the landlady, I would cast Holland Taylor. I have loved Holland Taylor since I first started watching television. I mean, uh, she is amazing at both comedy and dry comedy. And I would, yeah, I'm here for this. I would love to see this show. And then as Spinnaker's nephew, James, I've cast Lewis Pullman, whose work I'm not familiar with, but that was the suggestion given to me, and I'm running with it. Following Captain Spinnaker is another show that I would really love to see fruition. It's called Sagebrush and Cactus. Now, Sagebrush and Cactus does take place in 1935, and they are holdovers from years past. They are a couple of old prospectors, and there is an actual melodramatic type villain uh, by the name of Knife Ambush. Uh, Using Chatbox, I have given him the first name Clyde. So Clyde Ambush with the nickname of Knife. Uh, and Knife has set his sights and has dastardly machinations towards a townsgirl named Betty. Wasn't given a last name in the source material. Again, using Chatbox, I came up with the name Harrington. And, these two bumbling old prospectors get involved. Now, as the prospectors, Cal Sagebrush, I have cast Matthew McConaughey. And as Alec Cactus, I have cast Josh Brolin. I have seen both of these actors do comedy, and I have seen them do drama. And I have especially seen both of these actors do character work. And I just think that this could be gold. This could be real gold. And then as the villain, Clyde Ambush, I've cast Timothy Oliphant, who is great at a villain, uh, but he also has the acting chops to pull off a melodramatic, mustache twirling villain and make you believe it. Um, and then as Betty Harrington, names, uh, I have Gugu Mabatha Raw, and this is a name that was suggested to me, and I think it. Looking at her filmography, I think it is a good one. So moving on to the next one, we have Jay Worthington Blimp. Now, when I cast this and made the AIs, I was actually under the impression that it was like a around the world in 80 days kind of thing. And then I actually reread some of it. Yeah. The best comparison is to for Jay Worthington Blimp is if you're familiar with Wimpy from Popeye. He is fat, he is lazy, but he is also very pompous and a bit of a braggart. And much to the amusement of his family and neighbors, he gets talked into, and his mouth gets him in trouble, and he gets talked into uh, various weight loss fads. Um, and then in the end of the series, or towards the end of the series, he makes a bet that he can bicycle from the East Coast to California. And about halfway there, he meets this guy named Jupiter Jones, and together they end up stealing a stagecoach and riding the stagecoach the rest of the way. Now, again, when I made the AIs, I thought it was like around the world in 80 days, and his last name's Blimp, so that's why all of the hot air balloons are in the background. But as Jay Worthington Blimp, I have cast John C. Riley. I've his comedic roles are fantastic. Not as great as his dramatic roles, but his comedic roles are fantastic. Um, and I think he could play Pompous if he really wanted to. Uh, as his uh, brother-in-law, brother-in-law Willis, um, who was not given a last name in the uh, comic book. I have given him the last name Grimes. Um, I have cast names Kumal Nanjiani, and I love his comedy. I really do. Um And then playing Blimp's sister, again, not given a name in the comics. So I have named her Millicent Grimes. I have Catherine Keener, another fabulous comedian. And then as Blimp's nephew, Henry Grimes, again, new name, I've cast Finn Wolfhard, who I think is an amazing actor. I love Stranger Things. And then for Jupiter Jones, I have cast Jeff Goldblum. I I love Jeff Goldblum. Have since I first saw The Fly when I was a kid. So that kind of makes my heart happy. Okay, one more quick one before I get on my soapbox for a minute. Needles is about a man who is convinced that he should be a great inventor. Unfortunately, all of his inventions are inherently flawed, and they uh, cause problems in the most disastrously humorous way possible. Um, in the role of Needles, I have cast Diego Luna. All right, soapbox rant incoming in three, two, one. Here we go. Back when I talked about the original gay characters I had created for Jack Woods, I said that I don't care if an actor is straight or gay when they portray a gay character. That's only half true. Uh, I don't mind it when they're playing a dramatic gay character. However, if the person involved is portraying a stereotype that can be perceived negatively, then I might have a problem with it. Now, this rant is about stereotypes in media and my feelings on them. Some stereotypes are funny, and sometimes they take it too far. Um, as a gay man, society is currently telling me that I should not enjoy Sean Hayes as Jack McFarlane in Will and Grace, or Leslie Jordan in pretty much any Leslie Jordan role, because with a couple of idiosyncratic changes, it's the same role. And I've met the man, it's because he's just like that in real life. It doesn't matter if it's American Horror Story, Will and Grace, or my personal favorite Storied Lives. It's the same guy. And he's like that in real life. Don't have a problem with it though, because Sean Hayes and Leslie Jordan are both gay men. They're making fun of themselves as much as they are the stereotypes that they're perpetuating. Finding examples of Latinos doing this are a lot harder. The only one that comes to mind is Ricky Ricardo from I Love Lucy. Yes, he is Cuban, but that accent of his is extremely exaggerated for comedic effect in the show. Uh, it's a lot easier to find examples of African Americans doing this. Um, so early Eddie Murphy, early Will Smith, pretty much anything by Tyler Perry, the Barbershop movies, the Friday movies, uh, even that new horror comedy Blackening, they all have at least some racial stereotypes in it. The difference is it's being written, produced, and starring African American people. So I think as a society, we give ourselves permission to laugh. All right, now let's talk about the uh, comic feature I would not do in my first video, and that is Chico Chaco. I am the stepson of a Mexican Latino. I was raised by Latinos. I do find some aspects of this comic strip funny, but a lot of it I'm offended by. And the thing that offends me the most is it's written by white men. Um, so I don't think it's a complete, throw it in the trash because I wouldn't do that. What I do think is that it needs to be fixed. And starting with the name. Now, I use Chatbox to come up with something that I found a little less offensive. Not by much, but a little less offensive. So we're going to call the show Amigos Locos, which translates to Crazy Friends. Uh, Again, a little less. I think I could still do better if I gave myself more time, but I want to get these videos out. Uh, and I would actually cast Latino actors and give them a say in the scripts, let them take the parts from the strip that work and like completely throw away the stuff that takes it too far or that is too offensive and and then we have something that might work as a comedy. This is something I didn't have the option of doing with the 1935 castings is there were no Latino actors. Luckily today we live in 2024 and there is an abundance of them. So I can cast Latino actors. Um, as I said, I don't like the name Chico Chaco. Yeah, something about the name itself just offends me. So I have once again used Chatbox to create a new name for the main character, and that is Carlos Bravo, which is still a little stereotypical. I mean, Carlos is a very common name, but it's better than Chico Chaco. In the role of Carlos Bravo, I have cast Luis Gerardo Mendez, and as his best friend's sidekick, I have by the name of Chico with no S like it is in the comics. It's not Chico's, it's Chico. I've cast Anthony Ramos. Okay, soapbox rant done. I've done my casting. Now, as you can see, all of these adult comedies are completely different from each other. I really don't see how we could cross over between each of them like we did with the family shows and the teen comedies, much less crossover with the rest of the world as a whole. Um, so yeah, I don't see them fitting in anywhere. However, the reason I went on and cast them is because I don't think that they should be scrapped. I think that they were comic strips that were created by DC, and just because they don't fit into a greater continuity doesn't mean that we should just forget about them or toss them to the wayside. I think that they could, make some really funny sitcoms, and I happen to love really funny sitcoms. So that's why I went on and cast them. All right. Next up, we're going to talk about some adventure television that, like the comedies, just does not fit into continuity without like shoving it in. Um, First up is Don Drake on the Planet Sorrow. I would actually just shorten the name to Planet Sorrow. Um, and I think it works best if it is a campy, retro futuristic. So the campy costumes we would see from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. Um, campy laser beams, but with modern special effects. Um, as the lead, Don Drake, I've cast Charles Melton. I loved him in Riverdale. I think he has some potential as leading man material. And then as his girlfriend Betty, who is also exploring this planet with him, I have cast Margot Robbie. Uh, her star power is undeniable. And I'm going to follow that up with Captain Eric. Is about an old sea captain, and it's like an adventure on the high seas. And I have chosen Jeff Bridges in that role. I think he would do really well as an old sea captain. From the high seas to the mid 18th century, we have Buckskin Jim. Now, Buckskin Jim is an orphan that makes his living as a tracker and trapper. And then he's got this friend named Trapper Pete who showed him the ropes and checks in on him occasionally. Uh, and they see a wagon that is moving out west get attacked by Native Americans, and one of the people on the wagon, a girl named Mary Holiday, uh, gets kidnapped, and it's up to um, Jim, Pete, and the boy and the girl's father, Zeb, to find and get her back. Um, the Native American chieftain was not given a name in the source material. So using Chatbox, I have come up with the name Red Eagle for him. All right, castings. As Buckskin Jim Kenyon, I've cast Walker Scobell. As Trapper Pete, I've cast Sam Elliott, who is a perennial favorite. For Red Eagle, I have Zahn McLaren. For Zeb Holiday, I have James Badgedale. And for Mary Holiday, I have Brooklyn Prince. From Buckskin Jim, we are going to move into Little Linda. Now, as I said in my first video, I'm not sure if Little Linda was original to National Allied periodicals, um, despite what the comic claimed to be. I know that at some point she was syndicated because I read her as a child in Sunday papers. I don't know if that happened before, during, or after her appearances in the comic books, um, and whether or not she was actually an original property owned by National Allied Periodicals. Um, but I am including her in this list because I love the strip and I think that it would make a good TV show. So, as little Linda Flint, I have Miriam Spunkin. As her uncle or her evil Uncle Wilbur Stone, I have David Strathern. As Wilbur's son, Buddy Stone, and I have cast Brendan Fraser. Now, I love Brendan Fraser. Ever since I saw Encino Man as a child, but um, I've always seen him as a hero. I want to see him as a man evil enough to kidnap his cousin in order to make a buck. So, yeah. Uh, Next up, I have Hank the Hobo. For this role, I have cast Ethan Hawke. Now, Hank the Hobo is a fun character. He teaches Linda to ride the rails and is pretty much a happy-go-lucky person. But I think that Ethan Hawke could actually bring some gravitas to this role, uh, and really give him some depth that is missing from the strip, and I'm here for that. Now, in the comics, Linda's stepmother and stepbrother are not named. Uh, so using Chatbox, I have created names for them. Now, as the stepmother was married to Linda's father, she would have the same last name as Linda. Uh, but I have given her the first name Hester. So as Hester Flint, I have cast Kate Blanchett. Here's why. As I recall, at the start of the story, the stepmother is just as evil as Wilbur and Buddy. She wants to use Linda for the inheritance money and uh, is not a good person. But when Linda gets kidnapped and then disappears entirely, uh, her motherly instincts come out and she realizes she does want to be a mother to this child. And Kate Blanchett has such range. I think it would be a privilege to watch her go through that journey. Now, the stepbrother would obviously have his father's name, so it's going to be a last name, so it's going to be different from Linda's and the stepmother's. Um, and I've given him the first name of David, so it's going to be David Lane. And for that role, I have cast Judah Pren, Prehn. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm really sorry if I didn't. Um, but yeah, that is Little Linda. Moving on, we have Skipper Hicks. Skipper Hicks is about five people, three retired sailors, and the wife and daughter of one of the sailors, who go on a treasure hunt and have adventures looking for this treasure. As Skipper Hicks, I have cast John Goodman. I think he makes a great ship captain. As Soup Ladle Jones, the cook, I have Nick Offerman, who, yeah, I think this is going to be a funny adventure. As Sponge Nose Kelly, I have John Carroll Lynch. As his wife, Minnie Kelly, I have cast Cherry Jones. And as Marie Kelly, their daughter, I have cast Aubrey Plaza. Um, we got some funny people on this cast, so I think it would be more of an adventure comedy. Now, unlike the other features on this list, uh, Vikings would definitely have a TVMA rating. I mean, the others, you could go a little more mature, you could go a little less mature, but Vikings would definitely be TVMA uh, for the violence, especially one particular act of violence that happens at the beginning of the story. Uh, and unlike the Vikings TV show that we got from the History Channel, which was very reality based, in this comic adventure that we would hypothetically be turning into a TV show, the Norse gods take an actual hand in the goings on, going ons, and events being played out before us. So the story follows Lothar, who in the end of the first uh, part would just have just been born 2 days prior, and that's at the end of the first part. So this first section takes place before his birth. Um, as his mom, uh, both IMDb and Google and Chatbox all gave me the same name, and it is a TikToker influencer by the name of Freja Gustafsson. Gustafsson. I hope I pronounced that right. Freja Gustafsson. So she would be Lothar's mother. As Call the Wise, a hermit, we have Peter Starmere. As Hagbard, who would be Sigrid's dad, I have Stellan Skarsgård. As King Harold, who would be Lothar's father, I have Alexander Skarsgård. I'm excited for that one because I loved him in True Blood, and he looks so great with long blonde hair. And then as Odin, King of the Gods, I have cast Nikolaj Coster Walden. Uh, I hope I got the pronunciation right. Uh, I absolutely loved him as Jaime Lannister in Game of Thrones. Yeah, Jamie was not the most likable character, but by the end, I was really feeling for him. And he was really easy on the eyes. So he's a bit young for Odin, but I think we can make it work. So yeah, I've cast Nikolaj as Odin. Moving on. Okay, for this last entry in the action adventure TV genre, um, I was really torn whether to put it in comedy or action adventure, because at its heart, it's really more of a romance. Um, it does have a lot of comedic elements, but it is also about time travel adventures. So I'm putting it in adventure, but it could have very funny elements and it could have very romantic elements to it. The story follows Oliver Weed, whom I have cast as with Mark Strong. Uh, and he is an inventor who invents a time machine. And he, along with his financier Uriah Moucher, whom I have cast Stephen Fry, again, free AI, cheap AI. Uh, and his assistant Fritz, played by Thomas Doherty, they go back in time from 1935 to 1835, so 100 years in the past, and they have adventures there in the past and end up finding their true loves, and they decide to stay there rather than going back to the future. Yeah, I just said that. All right. Next up, I'm going to discuss some animated series that we could possibly have in this hypothetical uh, DCU reboot if we started at the very beginning. All right, y'all. This video is already way longer than I ever intended it to be, so I'm going to try and breeze through these next four as quickly as possible. Pelion and Asa were a penguin and a bear, and they had a friend named Mr. Walrus. And this obviously takes place on Earth C, even though it's some 50 years before we would start calling it that. Uh, I would best way to do anthropomorphic animals is cartoons. So that's how I'm going to do this. As Pelion the Penguin, I have Nick Frost. As Asa the Bear, I have Gemma Chan. And as Mr. Walrus, I have Mark Addy. There's no AIs because I couldn't get them to look right. So moving on. Sirloin of Beef and his sidekick Cowslip uh, were a medieval knight and squire. Shortly after the run began, though, it changed its name. The feature changed its name to Don Coyote, and the sidekick now became Hamburger. At some point, there was a comic strip where also named Don Coyote, where he was an actual coyote, and then it became a cartoon in like the 70s. So I'm skipping the middle part and just going straight to that. So, as Don Coyote, I have Pedro Pascal, and as Hamburger, I have Steve Carell. Uh, Billy the Kid is very similar. In the strip that came out in 1935, he's an actual kid that gets in trouble. We've got enough of those. Uh, but then later on, when funny animals became the fad, uh, post World War II, there was a strip called Billy the Kid where it was a goat that was a cowboy. Um, and in the 1935 strip, there is a character named Pudge who was probably Billy's best friend. So in my mind, I have again skipped ahead, and Billy the Kid is a goat, uh, and Pudge is a bulldog, and they are cowboys. So as Billy the Kid, I have cast Paul Rudd, and as Pudge, I have cast Jack Black. And then finally, we have Dickie Duck. Dickie Duck is like a cigar smoking Groucho Marx version of Daffy Duck. And then Farmer Gray would be like Elmer Fudd, uh, a farmer. And in order to make this work as an Earthsea creation, we would have to turn Farmer Gray into an anthropomorphized animal. Um, I haven't thought far enough ahead to decide what that would be, but he would have to be an animal as well. So as Dickie Duck, I have cast Ben Schwartz, and as Farmer Gray, I have cast J.K. Simmons. and those would be the animated features for my Earthsea revamped DC universe. Okay, almost there. So next up, we're going to discuss seven comic book features that I think ought to be made into feature films instead of television, which is what I've been discussing so far. Um, the reason being is that all but one of these features were only in between 2 and 4 issues of the comic books. That's not enough to make a television series out of. However, if you throw in some traditional movie tropes, uh, it is enough to build a feature film from. So the first one, though, differs in 2 very distinct ways. One, Scrub Hardy could fit into the greater hypothetical Earth 2 reboot continuity because he could cross over with the other teen comedies like Charlie Fish or Jack Andrews. And the other is that he actually had a fairly extensive run. The problem with Scrub Hardy is that um, his feature was used as filler. So it would only be half a page to a third of a page long. And after 1935, his appearances were sporadic. Again, just used as filler instead of a feature. So what I would do is I would collect all of these strips for a particular year, throw in some teen comedy tropes, and do a movie each year until he stopped appearing. Um, Now, Scrub Hardy is a short guy in high school, always getting picked on, but he usually comes out much better than his bullies. So it's also got a little bit of heart there. Uh, as Scrub, I have Jacob Tremblay, who I think uh, could carry the movie. And at 5'4", he's the right height for the role. As his girlfriend Cookie Bots, I have cast Sadie Stanley. Moving on, we have Jigger and Ginger. Now, Jigger and Ginger also break this mold in that they can be part of the grayer continuity. Here's how. So they only appeared in 2 issues. But if you throw in some, you know, teen rom-com tropes and these 2 scenes set in 1935, you have yourself a wonderful Valentine's Day movie or start of the school year movie. Uh, but we can, after we have the film about the 3 characters, Jigger, Ginger, and Kip, who was always trying to break them up, then we can spin them off into one of the other teen comedies as recurring or supporting characters. And then, so the film's about them, and then they are supporting characters in a in one of the teen comedies. Or we could just introduce one of the stars of the teen comedies in their film and spin off the teen comedy into a television show. So, casting as Jigger, I have Jacob Elordi. As Ginger, I have Sadie Sink, who I absolutely loved in Stranger Things. And as Kip, I have Noah Centineo. So, Caveman Capers was a comedy strip about a prehistoric family dealing with dinosaurs and their interfamily dynamics. I am not familiar with any of these actors. They were suggested to me by Chatbox. So for the children, as we have Leo Abello Perry. As we have Kevon Woodard. And then for the parents, who were not given names in the original strip, I've named the mother Tala. I have Danielle Detweiler, and I've named the father Bork, and cast Wendell Pierce. Now, again, please forgive my free, cheap AI for uh, those ones we just did. Um, Getting them to actually make cave people was bad enough. Putting real life faces on them were even worse. Um, and the same goes for this next one. So Bubby and Beeble only appeared in 2 issues, and it was about this good garden gnome and this red devil type character fighting over this boy named Jackie, who was not given a last name. I've using Chatbox, I've given him the last name Ferguson. And yeah, so if you throw in some family comedy tropes, uh, this would be one of those family comedies that kids make fun of years later because it could possibly be traumatic, but they still remember it fondly. Um, it's the way a lot of Gen Xers do about their movies these days, um, including myself. Uh, so as Bubby, the garden gnome that comes to life, I have cast Christopher Lloyd. Man, that man has some comedic chops, and I think he would have a blast playing a garden gnome in live action at that. As Beeble, the Red Devil, I have cast names. Sorry. Taika Waititi, uh, who I am familiar with his work. I just don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry. Um, yeah, another person really great at comedy, and but he can be menacing too. I like it. As Jackie, we have a young actor by the name of Alan Kim. And then as Jackie's mom, who again wasn't a given name, I've named her Elena Ferguson. Uh, Names. We have Karush Tran. We have Jolly Roger. Now, Jolly Roger only appeared in 3 issues. And in the second issue, it changed its name to Jack Dewey. Now, we already have several shows named after the main character, so we're going to stick with Jolly Roger here. It is about a cabin boy on a Royal Navy ship in the 1800s, that the ship is attacked by pirates, and somehow he and the captain, Captain Smith, s- uh, um, get free without being captured, and then they go back and liberate the ship. Uh, so as Jack Dewey, I have Roman Griffin Davis, and then as Captain Smith, I have Deb Patel, and I think it would make a great, action adventure. Okay, Ray and Gale. As I mentioned in the other video, this feature is a mess. It starts off with a great premise, though. So Ray and Gale are twins. They have recently been orphaned. and their friend Willie invites them onto his family's yacht to get their minds off things. Once there, Willie's mother reveals this treasure map, and everyone on board starts fighting over the treasure map because they all plan on seeking out this treasure. Now, and then along the way, one guy gets eaten by sharks, and then they crash, and the plot gets lost, and it only lasted 3 issues, and it's very obvious why. However, as I said, the seed of the idea is there. They It could be an action adventure if they clean up the mess and actually finish it out and go on the treasure hunt. So, uh, as Ray, I have cast Lucas Hedges. As his twin sister Gail, I have cast Catherine Newton, who seems to be everywhere these days, and I am here for it because I have loved everything that she's been in so far. As their friend Willie, I have cast Mason Gooding, who I think is a great actor. I've enjoyed the couple of things I've seen him in. And then listed as the characters in the strip, though I can't remember what part they play, are Ray and Gail's parents, John and Mary. And I would hope that in cleaning this up, we would see them in more than just a flashback of them dying, but maybe there's a family secret that comes out over the course of the film. Uh, and again, done through flashback. In the roles, I have cast Hugh Laurie and Emma Thompson. Now, I recently heard this podcast where another actor uh, discussed being at university and being friends with Emma Thompson, and she introduced him to Hugh Laurie, and now he and Hugh Laurie are best friends to this day. And to the best of my knowledge, I've never seen Hugh Laurie and Emma Thompson do a project together. So, uh, and apparently they knew each other in college, so this could be like a little reunion. Uh, there is a character by the name of Silas Slump who is it's not mentioned where he comes from or what relationship he is to the other characters. He is the one that gets eaten by sharks. Um, in my head canon, he is actually Millie's brother and therefore Willie's uncle. And in this role, I have cast Brendan Gleeson. I did not care for uh, Joker 2. However, Brendan Gleeson was like a standout role. I really enjoyed him in that film. And then there's another character named Galt, who I believe is the first mate. Uh, he wasn't given a first name, so using Chatbox, I have come up with Desmond. So as Desmond Galt, I have cast Joe Keery. As Millie, Willie's mother, who has the treasure map, I have cast Allison Janney. I love Allison Janney. I think she is an amazing actress and so funny, and she could bring some heart and some humor uh, to this show or to this movie that I think is possibly going to get very heavy at times. And then as the captain, again, not given a name, I've come up with the name Bartley Fox. As Captain Bartley Fox, I have cast Vincent D'Osfrio. D'Osfrio. Again, I am terrible at names, and I apologize if I mispronounce that. Uh, but I believe that, they could start fighting over the map. Uh, the guy tries to steal it and gets eaten by sharks. The boat crashes just off of the island where the treasure is supposedly buried. So now you've got a castaway situation in addition to the treasure hunt and maybe this dark secret that Ray and Gail are hiding about their parents. I think it could be a great blockbuster film if cleaned up and done correctly. Now, for the last of these comic features that I would turn into feature films, we have Peter and Houlihan. Uh, First off, I would double check to make sure Houlihan is actually a uh, Native American name. Otherwise, I would change the name. This feature only appeared twice and is about the friendship between a young farm boy and a young Native American. Uh, and they uh, compare and contrast how the other lives. When I read it, it reminded me very much of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, only Huckleberry Finn is a Native American. Now, as Peter, I have cast Landon Gordon. Uh, However, for Houlihan, I would need to run a national talent search because IMDb, um, Chatbox, Google, and even that talent agency I found have all failed me. Uh, the best they could come up with is a young African American actor, and that might have flown in 1935, but this is 2024. I would want to cast a Native American as a Native American. So that would be the last of those feature films. Now I'm going to wrap up this video with Sideshow, which, as I explained in the first video, in from 1935 on through the 60s, there were books that carried these pages that were full of like one panel jokes, like you would see in Family Circle on Sunday Comics or The Far Side, where they just have one panel to tell a joke, and there would be a full page of these. Um, and all of these pages in most of the comics had like different names. The longest running one with the same name in the Golden Age was called Rube Goldberg's Sideshow. And what I would do is, if given the creative freedom, I would compile these and use them as seeds for um, a sketch comedy show like Big Gay Sketch Show, Saturday Night Live, Mad TV kind of thing. And I ran the numbers. On average, Saturday Night Live had a cast of 13 cast members, with 7 men and 6 women. So I have picked 13 of the funniest people I could find, using Chatbox's help, uh, to create this sketch comedy show type show that I would call Sideshow. Now, being as how it is based on like Saturday Night Live, of course, I have a lot of alumni from that show in my show. But in no particular order, I have actually, I think I put them in semi alphabetical order. I take that back. I have Io Edibiri, Bill Hader, Chris Redd, Cicely Strong, Hanson Minhaj, John Mulaney, Jenny Slate, Keegan Michael Key, Kate McKinnon, Maya Rudolph, Thomas Middleditch, Taryn Killam, and Tiffany Haddish. So that would be my cast for Sideshow, which would be uh, sketch comedy, very similar to Saturday Night Live. If you managed to make it all the way through this video and stuck with me through the end, thank you so much. I know that it was extremely long, like probably 3 times as long as I thought it would be. And I am very grateful to you for being here. Please hit that like and subscribe button. I am trying to make this into a side hustle, so I'd appreciate it. And share with all your geeky friends who you think might like to see these 1935 characters made into live action. All right, surf's up. I gotta go. Y'all hang loose, and I'll catch you next time.